welcome back to the Coach Dave Academy YouTube channel. My name's Bart, and today we'll be doing another lap guide video. Today we're at Kota for the iRacing Formula iR-04. Let's get into the hot lap. Okay, so coming down the main straight now, heading towards turn one. First thing is, I don't want to go over it too many times, but the track limits here are pretty consistent. It's always, if you've got your wheels on it's F1 rules, white line. So you've got a wheel on the white line, you'll be okay. So you can see here, I'm moving over the curb, but I have my left tires still on the white line entry here. So all fine in terms of track limits. Turn one, quite a tricky hairpin. Braking, and we haven't got you'll see later on, the other heavy braking zones are better references than this one. This one's a bit trickier. My braking reference is kind of a rough judgment of how far we are from this pit exit line. So you can see it's just a little bit before it. If you find yourself braking just in front of it, you'll be definitely braking too late for turn one. So just judge your distance from that, I would say, is the best way to work out the braking for the first corner. Down to second gear. Main thing here is that you have a very aggressive head of the brakes initially. And as you come over this crest, over this brow here, you got to start bleeding out the brakes. If you hold the brake pressure, quite often I find I lose the rear or maybe lock a front on the entry. So just keep that in mind. If you don't come out of the brakes as we go over this crest, it'll upset the car. So you can see there, I soften the brakes. If you feel like you're right on the edge all the way into this corner, you're probably over pushed it and you're going to get a really poor exit. And this corner is much more important to get our exit in this car, because there's quite a long run after this that we carry a lot of momentum through. Okay, so with that in mind, getting a good exit, you can see on throttle before we reach the apex curb, I wouldn't really be hitting it. It's good on this lap that we get really close to it. You don't have to be right next to it, but I'd say you want to be at least within half a car width to the inside of the white line. If you hit the curb, it's going to upset the car a bit, so just get as close as possible without hitting it would be good. Okay, picking up the throttle there, using all the track on the exit, again, white line track limits. And down through this flat out turn two. Not much to say here, just shorten the distance as we set up for this S section now. This is where it's a bit like, and it was originally created to be like the Magus Beckett's Chapel section at Silverstone, so you'll see some similarities there with how we prepare. Get all the way over to the right-hand side. Again, using all the track. and you want to be aiming to open up this right-hander that's coming up here as much as possible. So like I said, that starts with being all the way over to the right there, again all the way over to the left here. The only thing that's really going to be blocking us in this section are these really bad sausage curbs on the apexes. Do not hit these. At any cost in this car will really upset the car. Worst case scenario, you can get damage or be sent into a wall. So get close to them, but do your best not to hit them. You can see here, we're opening up this right-hander as much as possible. Again, white line track limits on the left, still flat out at this point. And then as you go into this right-hander, you should be lifting in fifth. And that'll help turn the car a bit. And then I'd pick up the throttle a little bit between this right and left apex. Just a nice brush of the brakes there just to keep the car, just to get some weight on the front of the car and help it turn. You can see I get really, really close to the left sausage here. That's kind of what I was saying in terms of we're aiming to get as close as possible to them without hitting them. Once we get past the sausage curb, we can pick up the throttle, back to full throttle there. Over to the right-hand side, bit of a lift. And the main purpose of that whole section is just carry speed. And that's why we're flat in, opening it up. We have that part lift, and then we have that short brake. That whole section is just carry speed, carry speed, carry speed. And this is the bit where we've got to start thinking about the exit, which is actually a few corners down the road, but it all starts here. So this right-hander, you can go for a wider entry, but I think it's much better to keep it tight, short the distance, and do kind of a double apex through here. So through the right-hander now, you can see a little bit of brake pressure from me there, just a soft brake to help turn the car. That should get it rotated, and then you can be quite aggressive on the throttle pickup there. As long as you do that and you get the car all the way back over to the right for this left-hand corner, then that's kind of your limitation there. You want to be as early as possible on the throttle here while still getting the car back to the right-hand side of the track. Okay, don't turn in too late here. We don't need to be fully over this green and turning in from up here because you won't really make it in time. You've got to get in a bit early for this left-hander as it drops away and it's a bit off camber. You can see down to fourth gear through the right. Short brake into here just to keep the car turned. And again, it's all just preparation. So now we're trying to get as far left as possible, get as close as possible to that sausage curb. Aim to get near this white line on the left-hand side here. Full throttle now. And then a brush to the brake, and then a really late shift to third. Don't shift to third when you hit the brakes. It'll slow the car down too much, and then you'll find you're too tight too early. Quite a complicated corner, this one. So have a little brake, and then down to third here, just as we need that little bit of extra front grip to turn the car and get it to the right-hand side of the track. And you can see this is our reference that I'm kind of looking for. And this is where this section will take a bit of practice, is you're looking to set up the previous 2 or 3 corners so you're in a position where you have your left tyre maximizing the track limits here on the white line and also having a fairly straight run here so we can be as early as possible to full throttle for what's quite a long exit. So see this soft brake, late downshift, really positive throttle pickup here. Quickly to full throttle. You can be quite aggressive with this initial steer left as well to get it turned in, and then smoothing the steering lock out. Get as close as possible to this inside curb. And also, I find if you shift before this curb, before this crest, it'll help sell the car as well. So you can short shift a little bit here will help. And also help turn the car and unload it over the hill. And it should find it a lot easier to keep it within track limits on the exit then. Okay, just shorten the distance through this kink. Keep to the left, over to the right. Don't run out to the over this runoff area too early. It's quite sensitive for an off track. And then using all the track limits again on the entry, we've got these white lines here which match with the braking board. So this is for the 100 board, and this one's for the 50 board. So keep that in mind. They're very useful. My braking reference here is just past the 100, as we'll see now. Down to second gear. Similar to turn 1, really aggressive hit of the brake initially, high brake pressure, then bleed out as we turn. If you hold the brake pressure again, it'll upset the car, and we're going to have to just take some load away from the tyre to allow it to turn, allow the car to rotate. So again, quite gently bouncing the car and trailing the brake in just to help it turn. get as close as possible to this inside curb. I think this is definitely the way to go here. But once again, a bit like turn one, I'd rather you be slightly deep and a little bit late than early. You don't want to be turning early and then turning out or hitting the inside curb here. It'll really affect your exit down this straight. Okay, onto the throttle, which will help sit the car and just give us back some rear grip when you initially pick it up. Up to full throttle, use all the track on the exit. And then now we just go a long way down the straight. Just keep the car on the right-hand side of the track. It's going to be your main overtaking spot in the race. Really should be a really powerful tow in this car and a lot of room to move across the track. Just keep in mind, if you go over the white line on either side, you will get off track. So in sixth gear now, again, we've got these really helpful white lines on the right-hand side here. So the second gear hairpin, the end of the straight that's coming up. Braking marker is on this 100 board pretty much. You can see here. Hitting my peak brake pressure just as we come up to it. Very similar to the other heavy braking zones, like I said. Hitting basically 100% brake pressure, holding that, and start to bleed out as you turn in. Once again, you don't want to clunk the inside curb. This one's not so bad. It's okay if you clip it a little bit. Certainly the red and white part of it. And this one you will get punished a bit if you go in a bit late and miss the apex here. So keep that in mind. So we're usually in a little bit early on this hairpin. On throttle just as we reach the apex. Push the car out. Use all the track limits. Try not to. It's quite easy at that corner to unsell the car and scrub the steering. Just try and be smooth and gain back over to the left-hand side. Again, please work the car to get it back to the left-hand side and use all the track because it's worth quite a bit here. And we're focusing on this next corner, coming with this next right-hander, which is quite important. So we want to be all the way over to the left-hand side. Also very common here, people turn in very early. My best advice to get around that, one is making sure we get all the way to the left before we brake, because it probably means you're going to take longer before you hit the brake and turn in, rather than trying to cut off the turn in and come in quite narrow. The other advice I would give is don't look to meet the curb here. Look to meet it here. I know it sounds a bit silly, but it'll make a big difference just meeting it around the middle of this orange sausage bit of the curb rather than really early here. And it makes a big difference in the next section for how we're positioned. Okay, so braking in a straight line, medium kind of brake pressure from fourth down to third gear. You can see here meeting it in the middle, even the end of this orange sausage rather than hitting the curb around here. And that's really crucial. I find third's really good as well. Keeps car settled, carries good minimum speed. You can be quite aggressive with the throttle pickup then. Smooth with the steering. You don't really need to worry about using all the exit because that means you're out of position for this next section coming up. Main thing is you should be out next to this white line here, parallel with this. That's your first reference. And then the next thing to aim for, and this section's quite tricky, and there's no specific right or wrong way of going about driving through this corner. It's more of a case of adapting each lap depending on your exit previously. So it's going to take a bit of practice to get used to. But what I would advise is that you go for kind of a V shape into here, pointing the car out to the outside of the track and then cutting back and kind of simplifying it rather than doing like a long continuous turn. We've got to keep the car in more of a straight line in our braking phase and our acceleration phase of the corner. Also, you won't be going all the way out to the edge of the track here. You lose too much time and it doesn't really work for the car. So best references, you kind of have, like I said, you got this white line parallel here and you can see this rubber line. We're sitting just off it on the outside here. And again, kind of going just off the rubber line on this part of the track. I look out here, not actually going to reach it, but you kind of look there to go, okay, I'm going in that direction. There's also this light, this TV screen as well to look at. This grandstand is a kind of reference to this orange barrier. So you can use one of those if that's really what you want to do. Other advice, especially if you've got VR or triple screens, look into this left-hand apex really early. Really, really early. Like I'm talking back here somewhere, even if you're braking this way. And this way is such a challenging corner, but it's the best way to, give yourself a reference of where you're going. And it's going to take a lot of practice for this corner, but that's just the type of corner that it is. So down to second gear. Main thing with this corner is so easy to overbrake. You can, in this car, you can't actually attack the brakes that much. You can see here, I'm hitting about 30% brake pressure through most of that braking zone. If you hit more than that, it really unsettles the car because it's so laterally loaded through this braking zone. It's kind of a constant turn. Like I said, we want to try and keep it as straight as possible with how we direct the car. But it's never perfect. And because of that, and the way this car gets very upset if you have a lot of load in the combined phase of the corner, so you're braking, you've got a lot of lateral load through the tyre, and you're really using the steering. So it's important that we understand that we're not mashing the brake pedal like we did in those heavy braking zones. Just controlling the car with the brake quite gently. It should kind of feel on the early side. If you're late into here, it really unsettles the car. Down a second gear, smoothly turn in, quick throttle pickup, use all the track on the exit, and then again work to get back to the left-hand side of the track. This next triple ride is quite easy. It's flat out. Only thing I would say is really smooth with the steering lock. Makes a big difference in this car if you scrub the steering, so don't just jam the lock on. Put some lock on initially, kind of hold it there. Meet this inside curb, it'll help turn it and shorten the distance once again. And then get into this camber on this bit of the corner, just seeing down low, and again shorten the distance and get back over to the right-hand side for this next left-hander. Okay. So for this left, main thing is use the track on the use the curb on the entry just to widen off this corner. Other thing is, again, you're going to be braking on slightly the early side, and early throttle pickup here will really settle the car. If you brake late and don't pick up the throttle, I find the car gets really unsettled over this apex as we kind of drop away. So it's important to be on the throttle when we hit this curb, and also the car will hook up really nicely if you can get your left wheel over this sausage curb, and it's still legal as long as we're on the white line here, but this is the very limit of what you're allowed to do. And we could also be really quick at the throttle pickup as well once we're on that curb. Use all the track on the exit, up to 5th gear, and then one of the most interesting corners of the track, this final corner, it's kind of like an uphill, quite wide 90-degree turn. In 3rd gear, braking a bit earlier than it feels like in some ways, or that it feels like you should be. Braking is between the end of this service road and this white line here. Quite a heavy brake, but very quickly bleed out. Turn in on the earlier side and use the uphill to your advantage and kind of slow the car down with the incline. You can, again, get in quite early, cut the corner just so you have your right-hand side tyres on the white line. And you can also have really low throttle pickup here that really helps your exit, and smooth on the steer on the exit, really easy here to get off track, which is the last thing you want in qualifying at the end of your lap. So full throttle, and then we cross the line. Thanks for watching this week's lap guide video. If you've got any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. And if you want to join the Coach Dave Academy Discord, you can find that in the video description. See you next week.